I'm Peter Block here in Atlanta at ACC 2010. And here at ACC, we have once again heard some results of trials comparing drug-eluting stents. I'm here with David Kanzari from La Jolla in California at the Scripps Clinic. David, more trials, more comparisons. What are we learning? Aren't we at the end of this yet?
Hopefully near the end at least, Peter. Thanks for having me. Just as you say, as our clinical trials experience with drug-eluting stents accrues, even chance has a chance for variable and unexpected findings. Here at the ACC meeting, we see two comparative DES trials. In these two cases, comparing the Endeavor stent versus the Cypher stent. One of the studies is the 5-year follow-up of the Endeavor 3 trial, and sample size issues notwithstanding, it provides very reassuring evidence for both types of drug-eluting stents. Very good safety profiles with regard to stent thrombosis and myocardial infarction for both stent types, lower for the Endeavor stent, still numerically higher TLR over late-term follow-up, but we start to see over late-term follow-up too more of a durability or plateauing of TLR with the Endeavor stent and more of a late progression of TLR or a merger of the curves so that the TLR differences are maybe not so disparate. On the other hand, we see a very large trial from Denmark, the SORT-OUT 3 trial, that compares the two stent types once again. This trial highlighting disparities, significantly so, in both TLR, myocardial infarction, as well as all-cause mortality, but not in cardiovascular death. And I think the interesting part about this trial, too, is how these trials, despite being both randomized, are similar in some ways, but in other ways provide disparate results.
Well, you could almost say that they're a little bit opposite, couldn't you? I mean, so how do you explain that? What do you think is going on? Is this just sort of chancy stuff?
I think on the one hand, it reminds us in some ways that sirolimus-eluting stents, in comparison to other DS, have never demonstrated inferiority. There have been studies showing comparable outcomes, but never superiority. And so in some ways, that remains a gold standard for us. On the other hand, I think there are themes that we've observed with both stent types that can be found in both of these trials. In other words, commonalities. For example, with the Endeavor stent, in both trials, the rates of very late stent thrombosis were very low, if not negligible. On the other hand, the efficacy outcomes with the Cypher stent were sustained over a long term.
So, in the long run, just a quick final sort of word, what do you think is going to happen long term with the new stents? They're going to be about the same?
You know, as our healthcare is becoming more and more refined, these event rates in these trials are extremely low and extremely favorable for our patients, most importantly. But it also means that when we're thinking about bioresorbable polymers or bioresorbable stents, that the opportunity to demonstrate superiority is going to be very, very challenging. It's going to be a high threshold. And it's more likely that these newer stent designs would be accepted more on intuition or perception than clinical evidence.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for having me.